chosen one. There were seasons when you pulled away from people and quietly wondered if something was wrong with you. You needed more silence than others, seemed to need more time alone, more space to breathe and come back to yourself. Yet people around you may have called you distant, difficult, or strange because they could only see your distance and never the exhaustion underneath it. They did not know how much you were carrying internally, how easily certain environments could overwhelm you, or how deeply you needed stillness after giving so much of yourself away. What looked like withdrawal may have sometimes been your soul asking for room to recover, to become quiet again, and to hear itself beneath everything you had absorbed. There have also been moments when you suddenly felt that you needed to leave a place, step away from a person, or change direction, even though you could not explain the feeling. Everything may have looked perfectly normal on the surface, yet something inside you felt unsettled. You questioned yourself because you had no evidence, no clear explanation, nothing you could point to and say, "This is why." But later, you sometimes understood why you had been pulled away, and those moments stayed with you, because they made you wonder whether your instincts had been trying to tell you something before your mind could understand it. This is where your discernment begins to matter. Your anointing, as you understand it, does not always arrive as a dramatic revelation. Sometimes it is the quiet hesitation. Before a decision, the sudden peace that comes when you choose a different direction, or the feeling that tells you to pause before you move forward. There have been moments when clarity seemed to appear from nowhere, when one thought settled into your mind and somehow helped you know what to do without needing every detail explained. You may have dismissed those moments as coincidence, but perhaps they were also teaching you to pay attention to the quieter ways guidance can enter your life. Look back at what you have survived too. There were storms you once believed would change you forever, seasons that left you exhausted, and moments when you wondered how you would ever feel whole again. Yet somehow you kept moving. That does not mean every painful experience had to happen for a reason, or that you must turn every wound into a spiritual lesson. It means you can recognize the strength that carried you through them, the people who helped you, the choices that protected you, and the deeper faith that kept something alive inside you when you had very little left to give. And maybe that is why you have always felt things so deeply. Your heart reacts strongly, you notice what goes unsaid, and sometimes you can walk into a room and sense that something has shifted before anyone speaks about it. There may have been times when you wished you could feel less, because being sensitive seemed like such a difficult way to move through the world. You wondered what life would be like if you could simply ignore what your heart was noticing and move on like everyone else. But sensitivity, when held with wisdom and healthy boundaries, can become a form of awareness rather than something you need to be ashamed of. Type yes to receive miracles. Let it be a moment of agreement with the possibility that you can learn to understand yourself more deeply instead of constantly questioning every part of who you are. Because there were times when you doubted your own mind, wondering whether you were overthinking, imagining things, or giving meaning to feelings that should have been ignored. You tried to push those feelings away, yet they kept returning, asking for your attention in the quiet moments when there was nowhere left to hide from yourself. You have known that feeling before. Everything looks fine from the outside, but something inside you says, slow down, be careful, pay attention. You may not have known whether it was fear, instinct, experience, or intuition, and learning the difference is part of your growth. You do not have to obey every feeling simply because it is strong. You are learning to become still enough to discern what deserves your attention, and patient enough to let clarity reveal itself. That is a deeper kind of spiritual maturity, because true guidance does not need panic to make itself heard. You have also carried another pattern for a long time, giving more than you had, showing up for people when you were already exhausted, offering your time and presence even when you rarely received the same care in return. People may have come to you when they needed comfort because there was something about your presence that made them feel understood, but there comes a point when compassion without boundaries becomes exhaustion. And this is one of the lessons you are entering now. You can care deeply and still rest. You can help someone and still step away. You can love people without making yourself responsible for carrying everything they refuse to carry themselves. This is part of what the anointing within you is teaching you to understand. You are learning when to stay and when to leave, when to speak and when to remain quiet, when to give and when to receive, when to be present for someone and when to protect the little strength you have left. There is wisdom in those distinctions. Your growth is not simply about becoming stronger so you can carry more. It is also about becoming wise enough to know what was never yours to carry in the first place. You are not meant to remain confused about yourself forever. There is a shift taking place as you begin to look at your own story with more compassion, and the more honestly you listen to yourself, the more clearly you can recognize what brings peace, what drains you, and what pulls you away from the person you are becoming. You are moving from constantly asking, "What is wrong with me?" toward a quieter question, "What is this experience showing me?" That question changes something inside you because it leaves room for understanding instead of judgment. Even now, you may be beginning to see certain parts of yourself differently. The sensitivity you once wanted to hide may be teaching you awareness. The solitude you once feared may be giving you clarity. And the experiences that once left you questioning yourself may now be helping you recognize what you need in order to live with greater peace. This does not mean every difficult feeling has a mystical explanation. It means you are becoming more willing to listen, to learn, and to recognize the ways you have been guided through seasons you once thought would consume you. And this realization is only opening another layer of the journey. The quiet power within you may still feel unfamiliar at times, but you are beginning to understand that growth does not always feel comfortable while it is happening. There are things being strengthened in you through patience, through solitude, through difficult decisions, and through the slow process of learning who you are when you stop measuring yourself through everyone else's expectations. You are being prepared to move forward with more awareness, more discernment, and a deeper trust in what God is doing within you. So remember this, chosen one. You do not have to understand the entire path before you take the next step. There are seasons when God shapes you quietly, when the work is happening beneath the surface and you cannot yet see what it will become. You are not walking through this season without meaning, and you are not walking through it alone. I am with you in the quiet moments, in the questions, in the decisions, and in the gradual awakening that is teaching you how to recognize the strength that has been growing within you all along. From here, chosen one, you may begin noticing something quietly changing in the way you see your own life. Things that once felt disconnected may start forming a pattern, and moments you thought were random may suddenly carry a different kind of meaning when you look at them from where you are standing now. The doors that closed, the directions you were pulled away from, the moments of unexpected clarity, and even the seasons when you felt completely lost may begin to look like pieces of a story you could not understand while you were living it. You are not being asked to pretend that every painful thing was good. You are simply beginning to recognize that what you survived helped shape the wisdom and strength you carry today. There is a particular kind of peace that comes when you stop fighting your own story. You have spent so much time trying to explain yourself to people who only saw the outside of your experience, softening your feelings so they would sound reasonable, making your intuition smaller so nobody would think you were strange, and pretending certain things did not affect you as deeply as they did. You wanted to feel ordinary because ordinary felt safer than being misunderstood. But there is something within you that has always reached beyond that version of yourself, something spiritual and deeply personal that you are finally becoming willing to acknowledge instead of hiding. Type 777 if you trust God. There may also come a point when familiar places no longer feel quite the same, and relationships you once moved through effortlessly begin to leave you feeling strangely depleted. A conversation that used to feel easy may suddenly feel heavy, and a place that once felt comfortable may leave you longing for silence when you get home. This does not automatically mean that everyone around you is wrong, or that you have outgrown everyone. Sometimes it simply means your awareness is changing, and you are becoming more honest about what brings you peace and what quietly takes it away. As your awareness deepens, you may notice your intuition becoming easier to hear. You might catch a change in someone's tone, sense that a situation needs more time, or feel drawn toward one decision while another creates an uneasiness you cannot immediately explain. These moments deserve attention, but they also deserve wisdom. Your anointing does not require you to live in fear of every feeling. It invites you to become still enough to discern what is fear, what is old conditioning, and what feels like that quiet inner knowing that does not need to shout to be heard. There were times when you ignored that inner voice because you thought logic had to be louder. You convinced yourself to stay when something in you wanted to leave, said yes when you were already exhausted, or gave someone another chance because you were afraid of what it meant to trust yourself. Sometimes you saw the consequences later and wondered why you had not listened sooner. But this message is not here to make you regret those moments. It is here to remind you that discernment grows through experience, and every time you learn something about yourself, you become better able to recognize what deserves your attention. As that understanding grows, your boundaries will begin to change too. You may stop explaining every decision to people who have already decided not to understand you, and you may become less willing to remain in places that repeatedly leave you drained, simply because leaving would disappoint someone. Choosing peace can feel uncomfortable when you have spent years earning approval by being available to everyone. But protecting your energy is not a rejection of love. Sometimes it is the first way you learn to love your own life with the same care you have so freely given to others. Type 122 if you walk by faith. There is a quieter strength rising in you now, and perhaps you are only beginning to recognize it, because it does not look like the strength you once imagined. It is not loud, and it does not need to prove itself. It is the strength that lets you breathe before reacting. Walk away without creating a war, and remain steady when someone else does not understand your decision. This is the strength that carried you through nights when you thought you had reached your limit, and now it is becoming something more than endurance. It is becoming confidence. You are also learning that becoming yourself can change the people around you. Some relationships may grow quieter. Some people may question the choices you make, and there may be moments when someone you hoped would understand simply cannot meet you where you are going. Let yourself feel the grief of that without immediately turning it into a story about who is right and who is wrong. Sometimes nobody has to be the villain. Sometimes two people simply grow in different directions, and parting becomes an honest acknowledgement of what the relationship can and cannot hold anymore. And as some connections loosen, others may begin to feel more natural. You may meet people who allow you to breathe instead of making you perform. People who respect your need for space without making you feel guilty for having it. And people who can sit with the deeper parts of you without asking you to translate everything into something easier to understand. You will not have to chase these connections or constantly prove your worth inside them. There will be a different kind of peace there. The kind that comes when you realize you can finally be present without wondering whether you are too much, too quiet, too sensitive, or too different. There is another lesson waiting for you in all of this, and it is the lesson of stillness. The world around you will keep telling you to move faster, accomplish more, respond immediately, and fill every quiet space with noise. But some of the clearest things you will ever understand may come when you stop moving long enough to listen. Sit with yourself without demanding an answer. Let the room become quiet. Let your breathing settle, and notice what remains when everyone else's expectations become distant. Because there are things about your life that cannot be understood through constant analysis alone. Sometimes clarity arrives after the conversation is over, after the phone is put down, after the noise fades, and you are finally alone with what you have been feeling all along. This is where your connection to the deeper part of yourself can become clearer, and perhaps this is the next part of your awakening. Chosen one, learning that you do not always need another voice to tell you who you are when you have finally become quiet enough to hear the truth taking shape within you. There were seasons when you looked around and felt as though everyone else was moving ahead, while your own life had somehow become still. You watched people reach milestones, make decisions, build relationships, and step into new chapters, while you were left wondering why your path seemed to take so much longer. But what you could not see then was that your journey was never measured by speed. It was shaping you through depth, patience, and experiences that could not be rushed. While others were moving quickly, something within you was being prepared more quietly, at a level that required time to mature. You are beginning to understand now that what looked like falling behind may have been positioning. The delays, the pauses, the seasons when nothing seemed to move, and the long stretches of waiting were shaping your readiness for what comes next. Some things could not have reached you while you were still becoming the person capable of carrying them, and as you keep moving forward, you may begin to recognize the strange way certain pieces of your life have been connecting, as though the waiting was quietly leading somewhere all along. The quiet power within you is beginning to mean more than protection. It is becoming direction, a steady inner sense that helps you recognize what belongs with the person you are becoming, and what no longer does. You may find yourself drawn towards certain opportunities, certain connections, and certain experiences that feel more natural than the paths you once tried so hard to force. This is where the journey of the chosen one begins to feel different, because you are no longer trying to make your life fit an old version of yourself. You are learning to recognize the places where your spirit can finally breathe. And with that comes a different kind of confidence. It is not the kind that needs everyone to notice you, agree with you, or tell you that you are making the right choice. It is quieter than that, almost like a settled feeling in your chest. You begin to appreciate the way you notice things, the way you feel deeply, and the way certain moments seem to speak to you before you have words for them. Little by little, you stop treating those parts of yourself as problems that need to be corrected and begin seeing how they have helped you understand your own path. From here, your awareness continues to deepen. The challenges may still come, but you will begin meeting them from a different place, with less fear that every difficult season means something has gone wrong. You will start recognizing that some experiences have shaped your patience, strengthened your discernment, and taught you what your limits truly are. Your sensitivity, awareness, instincts, and quiet endurance are not separate pieces of your story. They have been developing together, slowly forming a kind of understanding you could not have received all at once. Even when the way forward feels unclear, you are learning that uncertainty does not automatically mean you are lost. There were also moments when you carried something inside you that was almost impossible to explain. You tried to put the feeling into words, tried to make sense of why certain situations affected you so deeply, while other people seemed untouched. And sometimes you even wondered whether you were simply overreacting. Yet some experiences are understood through paying attention rather than finding the perfect explanation. As your awareness grows, you may realize that the real lesson was never about having every answer immediately. It was about becoming honest enough to notice what was happening within you. Type 222. To receive miracles. You are beginning to notice that your presence itself can carry weight. Sometimes you enter a room and sense a subtle change before anyone says anything, or someone opens up to you about something they have been carrying quietly for a long time. There may be people who feel safe around you and others who seem unsettled without knowing exactly why, because your presence can bring hidden emotions closer to the surface. You do not need to make yourself smaller simply because you notice what others overlook. There have been times when you felt misunderstood, as though people could see pieces of you, but never quite understood the depth underneath them. In some places you may have felt almost invisible, while in others you felt as though you were somehow too intense, simply because you experienced things deeply. But the chosen one is not meant to spend a lifetime reducing themselves just to become easier for everyone else to understand. Your depth does not make you less valuable when someone cannot recognize it. It simply means your inner world deserves to be honored rather than constantly explained away. You have probably also noticed how certain people seem to find their way toward you when life becomes difficult for them. They come looking for comfort, understanding, or simply a place where they can breathe without pretending everything is fine. You may not always have the perfect words, yet sometimes your presence gives someone the peace they were unable to find anywhere else. That quiet ability to hold space for another person can be meaningful. But you are learning something equally important. You cannot keep pouring from yourself without making room to recover. You know what it feels like to give until you are emotionally empty, to keep showing up for people while quietly wondering when there will be room for you. This season is teaching you that caring deeply does not require carrying everyone else's burdens as your own. You can be a source of light without exhausting yourself trying to rescue every person who reaches for you. Type 777 to affirm your belief, and remember that protecting your own strength can also be part of honoring what has been placed within you. There is another kind of courage beginning to rise in you now. It is quieter than the courage people usually celebrate, because it does not need an audience. It is the courage to leave what continually drains you, to speak honestly when your voice trembles, and to choose peace without feeling guilty for it. You have been building this strength through all those moments when you thought you were simply surviving, and now you are beginning to see that endurance was changing you from the inside. The person who once needed constant reassurance is slowly learning how to stand beside their own decisions. You will begin trusting yourself more, even when your choices are difficult for other people to understand. You will feel less compelled to explain every decision, defend every boundary, or wait for someone else to approve the direction your life is taking. That does not mean every instinct is automatically right. It means you are becoming more attentive to the difference between fear, pressure, and that quiet inner knowing that asks you to pause and listen. The more honestly you listen, the more clearly you begin to recognize what belongs to you, and the more naturally your life starts moving toward what is truly meant for you. There were seasons when you felt delayed, watching life move around you while you seemed to be standing in the same place. You wondered why other people were reaching milestones, finding opportunities, and moving forward while your own life seemed to require so much more waiting. What you could not see then was that you were being prepared for something that needed deeper roots, something that could not be built in a hurry. You were not being held back. You were being strengthened in places no one else could see. Now, you are beginning to sense a change in the direction of your life. Opportunities may start appearing with a different kind of ease, and you may notice that certain things come together without the same struggle or forcing you once experienced. It can feel almost unfamiliar when what belongs in your life begins to meet you naturally. Your inner awareness and your outer circumstances are beginning to speak the same language, and with that comes a peace you may have forgotten was possible. You are also becoming more careful about what receives your time, your attention, and your emotional energy. You no longer feel compelled to keep every door open or remain available to everyone simply because you once did. This is not isolation. It is clarity, and there is a difference between withdrawing from life and becoming intentional about what you allow close to you. You are learning to release what continually pulls you away from your growth and make room for what allows you to breathe. There may still be moments when you question yourself, but those moments are beginning to lose the authority they once had over you. Instead of immediately reacting, you are learning to pause long enough to hear what is happening inside you before you decide what to do. You are learning to answer life with awareness rather than fear, to trust what you have learned rather than automatically expecting the worst. That quiet power within you is becoming steadier, and you are discovering that you can remain present even when circumstances around you feel uncertain. You will notice yourself becoming calmer in situations that once overwhelmed you, where confusion used to pull you into the middle of everything. You can now step back, observe, and recognize what is actually happening before allowing yourself to be carried away by it. This is one of the quieter signs of growth, because it may not look dramatic from the outside. Yet inside, something significant is changing. You are becoming harder to shake because you are beginning to understand yourself. A deeper peace is settling into you, even if you cannot hold on to it every moment yet. It does not depend on every circumstance becoming perfect, or every question receiving an immediate answer. It comes from knowing that you are guided, protected, and supported through whatever the season brings. There will still be uncertainty, but uncertainty no longer has to mean you have lost your way. You are learning how to remain grounded while the answer is still unfolding. You are also stepping into a stronger understanding of who you are. Other people's opinions may still reach you, but they no longer have to become the voice you use to define yourself. You are beginning to see your own life through a clearer lens, and that changes the way you speak, the choices you make, and even the way you enter a room. The chosen one is not simply someone who feels different. The deeper transformation is learning to live without constantly apologizing for that difference. As you move forward, your life begins to feel more deliberate. You are no longer allowing every circumstance to determine your direction or every emotion to decide what happens next. You are becoming more conscious of your choices, more aware of what deserves your attention, and more willing to follow the quiet guidance within you. This is what walking with purpose begins to feel like, not having every answer, but knowing how to keep moving when the whole road has not yet been revealed. What once confused you is becoming easier to understand. What once felt unbearably heavy is becoming something you know how to carry. And the experiences that once made you question yourself are beginning to reveal the strength they were building in you. You are not the same person who entered those seasons, because every difficult stretch taught you something about your own capacity, your own boundaries, and your own resilience. The truth is settling deeper now. You are becoming more aligned with the person you were always growing toward. You have spent enough time trying to distract yourself, filling the quiet with noise, because silence had a way of bringing everything you were avoiding back to the surface. But something in you is changing, and you are beginning to understand that silence can become a place of clarity rather than something to fear. When the world becomes quiet, you can finally notice what has been moving beneath all the noise, and that inner stillness gives you room to hear yourself more honestly. Type 1010 to receive blessings. You are also beginning to notice that your reactions have changed. Situations that once could pull you instantly into fear, anger, or overwhelm may still affect you, but they no longer control you in quite the same way. You can pause now, breathe, observe what is happening, and choose your response with a calmness that may even surprise you. Life has not necessarily become easier, you have become stronger within it. There were moments when you looked back at your past and wondered why certain things had to happen the way they did. You carried questions about the pain, the confusion, the loneliness, and those seasons when you felt separated from everyone around you, wondering what any of it was supposed to mean. Now you are beginning to see those experiences through different eyes, because they were building something underneath you that could hold the person you are becoming. The foundation was being formed long before you could see what it was for. You are no longer the person who automatically doubts every feeling or second-guesses every decision. You are becoming someone who can listen inwardly, consider what you sense, and still remain grounded when other people see things differently. That kind of trust does not appear overnight. It grows through experience, through mistakes, through reflection, and through those moments when you realize your instincts were worth listening to. Slowly, that trust becomes less like something you practice and more like something you carry. There is also a deeper patience developing within you. You are beginning to understand that you do not have to solve your entire life in one afternoon, or force clarity simply because uncertainty makes you uncomfortable. Some answers arrive when you have grown enough to recognize them, and some doors make sense only after you have walked far enough to look back. This patience protects you from making choices simply because you are afraid of waiting, and it teaches you to move with intention rather than urgency. Type 222 to claim miracles. You may have noticed that your connection to what is within you feels stronger now. You do not have to chase it or force yourself into some special state to find it. Sometimes it is simply there when you become quiet enough to notice. In those moments, you can feel that steady inner presence guiding your attention, reminding you to slow down and helping you recognize what matters. The connection itself is not new. Your awareness of it is what has changed, and that awareness is becoming stronger because you are finally listening. There will still be moments when doubt returns, when old fears and familiar patterns try to pull you back toward the version of yourself that once felt safer simply because it was familiar. But now you can recognize those thoughts without automatically believing them, and you can notice the difference between an old fear speaking and your deeper sense of direction. This is part of your growth. It is not about living a life where doubt never appears again, but about reaching the place where doubt no longer gets to decide where you go.